All right, well, today I wanted to talk about the first time I was rejected. So, when I was in 7th grade, back then I was a fairly average looking kid for the most part. I had like a skater, Justin Bieber kind of haircut that covered my entire forehead, covered my eyes some of the time. I wasn't short, but I wasn't one of the taller kids either. I'm 6'2" and a half now as an adult, but I didn't really hit my growth spurt until much later in high school. I was also super skinny in middle school. I mean, like really skinny. You could say I was pretty average overall. I do actually remember dancing with a few girls at the first school dance in 7th grade, so I wasn't like a complete loser. Athletically, I played basketball in middle school. That was probably the only sport that I was good at. I was pretty bad at all the other sports I tried back then, such as soccer and football. So I remember there was this girl that I liked back then. We'll just call her Ashley. She had a locker that was pretty close to mine. For one, she was like 3 inches taller than me, maybe even 4. I must have been like 5'3" or 5'4" back in 7th grade, and she was probably about 5'7", as girls grew a lot quicker than boys growing up. She was also like significantly better looking than me. She had like light brown hair, blue eyes. I didn't really come into my looks until I was like well into my mid-20s, after losing a ton of weight and restoring my hair from balding in my early 20s. And this girl was friends with a girl who lived down the street from me. Let's just call her Nicole. So I remember after school, I asked Nicole about Ashley. I had asked her if she was single, and I remember Nicole said that she was. So then told her that I liked her and thought she was like really pretty. She then told me to like ask her out. She's like, "Oh, you should ask her out." So I remember when I got home that night, I I got a piece of paper and wrote at the very top of the page that I think she's really pretty. And I wrote the question, "Will you go out with me?" and gave her a box to check no and a box to check yes. And I remember the next morning I saw Ashley by her locker, and I walked up behind her and tapped her on the shoulder. I was like super nervous. Like I was definitely like breathing heavily. She turned around and gave me like a slightly confused kind of look. It was like she was kind of shocked, like she wasn't expecting me to walk up to her. And I also like had the note in my hand, and my hand was like shaking awkwardly. I then said to her, I was like, hey, I wanted to give you this. And like I had folded the letter into like 8 parts, and it was like all crumbled. And she's like, "Okay." And then just like smiled awkwardly, and then just walked away to her homeroom. And the girl down the street was in my section. In middle school, we had all of our classes with the same people. And the girl that lived down the street from me asked me if I gave her the note. And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And she had said, "Okay, great. Well, I'll get the note from her before we get on the bus, and I'll give it to you." All day, I was hoping that she was going to check the yes button. I was like hoping and praying. And I was like really getting my hopes up. And I remember the dopamine rush of imagining the yes in my head and how good that would feel to like be dating her. So when I got on the bus, Nicole gave me the note. I remember opening it up and seeing that the no button was checked. And my heart like sunk immediately. And well, it was like getting punched in the stomach. And it felt like I could like barely breathe. And I remember just like looking out the window like I was like the biggest piece of shit in the world. And that bus ride, it was probably only 20 minutes, but it felt like it was 4 hours. And once I got off the bus, like I ended up like opening the note all the way, and it had a note that said "not yet." So when I saw this, it was like I had this like immediate like positive dopamine rush, and I thought to myself that I still had a chance and that she may still like me, but just that she's not ready now. So the next morning, I see Nicole at the bus stop. And she asked me if I had opened the note, and I told her that I did. I told her that she wrote no, but also wrote in not yet as well. I remember her telling me that I should go try to talk to her and get to know her. So when I got to my locker, I was like super nervous, but I got up the confidence to go over and walk over to her locker. And I remember walking up to her and saying, "Hey, I want to get to know you." And then like I remember asking like immediately after saying that, "What's your favorite TV show?" And I remember she was like really shocked by this, but I think she said something from Nickelodeon. I don't know if it was like Rocket Power or like Hey Arnold or one of those shows. I can't remember the exact show, But I remember it was a show that I liked, so I remember we talked about that for a few minutes. And then I immediately asked after, like, what music do you like? And she would respond, and then I would just, like, randomly ask another question. What's your favorite band? Until, like, it got really awkward. And she was like, I have to go to homeroom now. See ya. So for the rest of the day, I still had that, like, dopamine rush, thinking that she would like me. I remember later that day, I was sitting next to Nicole, and she whispered to me that she talked to Ashley. And excitedly, I was like, yeah, like, what did she say? And she was like, yeah, sorry, she just doesn't like you. And when I heard this, like, she said it pretty loud too, and like a lot of other people around heard it. So this like made it even worse, and like it was like my heart like crashed again, and I like couldn't breathe. And I remember just like staring at the top of my desk. I was like looking down at the top of my desk for what seemed like hours. And like luckily this was the last period of the day, and I just like rushed out of the school. Like I just zoomed down the hallway, zoomed down the stairs, and I walked on the bus, and I immediately like sat in the first seat that I could, sat as far close to the window as possible, and like shrugged down in the seat as low as humanly possible to not be seen by anyone, as I was like tearing up. Like this was my first real rejection, and it felt like just super brutal to experience for the first time. And this was like the first time I had a big crush on a girl, and it just like stung really bad to get that no, especially when you saw like that it said not yet, and you were just getting your hopes up, and you know, the dopamine was rushing all day, all to get that like no. And as an adult, I could look back and laugh at it, like, but during that time, it felt like super fucking brutal. And I think the first time you have a crush on a girl growing up, and you get a no, you're always gonna remember that. At least I do. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like. Feel free to comment down below your first rejection story, and feel free to subscribe. Until next time, take care.